Town Hall meeting for ICRA 2021. Every year at ICRA, we have a Town Hall meeting, and we try to address some topics that are relevant at the moment. And this year, that topic is diversity and inclusion. There are a lot of reasons that that's a topic that's right for this moment. In the US, we're having a lot of problems at the moment with social and racial justice. We have a history of that, and it's really come to the fore in our lives these days, but we're not alone. There are geographical regions all over the world where minority populations aren't being able to participate effectively in the decisions that have consequences for their own lives. There are economic pressures, climate change pressures that are exacerbating the differences in the quality of life between people that live in different regions of the world for no other reason than their geography or long historical economic conditions that, again, might have been beyond their control. Half the world is women, half the roboticists are not. That's something that's become increasingly conspicuous in recent years. We have a lot of shortcomings as a society, and we're trying to address those. It's not as fast as it should be, but the point of this town hall is to give you some overview of what exactly we're trying to do, hopefully motivate people to become more involved, to take these problems seriously. They are serious. People always say teams are better when they're diverse, and that's a nice engineering, pragmatic way to think about diversity. But it's also important to realize that there's a moral imperative behind this. The decisions that we make, the research that we do, those are consequential in the lives of people that presently are not participating in the research or the decisions about the research. And that's not right. So part of our diversity and inclusion efforts are, at least some part, motivated by the fact that people deserve to have a voice in their own future and in how technology will be affecting them. And so a part of our efforts are aimed at making the community bigger, bringing more voices in, and making the research more inclusive and more representative of who we are globally, not who we are as a small group of roboticists. So we have a program today to address a number of those issues. And I think what I will do is not give you an overview of the whole program, rather I'll introduce piece by piece what we're going to talk about. The first piece of that will be Allison, Okamura, and Chad Jenkins, who are going to talk about our newly established committee on diversity and inclusion and what they have in mind and how that might go in the coming years. Chad, Allison, it's yours.
Thanks a lot, Seth. Hello, everyone. I'm Allison Okamura. And Chad, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chad Jenkins from the University of Michigan.
Yes. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. I think Chad and I are going to speak very informally about the formation and what we're thinking is the purpose of the new Robotics and Automation Society Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And I'll speak first about some of the background, and then Chad can tell you about some of our thinking about where this might go, because this is a pretty nascent activity in the society. So this new Diversity and Inclusion Committee is being formed as in large part because of the things that Seth mentioned. There's a recognition that the Robotics and Automation Society, and this also goes to many IEEE societies, didn't necessarily have committees that were directly designed to advise on diversity and inclusion issues. And so this committee was created to do that. In terms of why exactly this got started, there's no denying, there's no question, this recognition and this action came in large part because of things that happened in the United States, in particular the murder of George Floyd, which happened just a little over a year ago, and increased attention to Black Lives Matter, and by extension, the general state of inclusion and equity or lack thereof for Black people in academia and STEM fields. But of course, there are many diversity issues that we can address beyond what I just mentioned. So gender equity challenges, of course, have been publicly acknowledged quite a bit recently, and You'll be hearing from more speakers today who have targeted very specific issues within the gender equity question. But I thought I'd bring up a couple examples that maybe hit particularly close to home for me and Chad, because these are related to our own universities at Stanford and Michigan. So one example is that recently a Michigan faculty member in the computer science area who studies human and machine intelligence was found responsible for harassment by the ACM organization, which I think is particularly interesting because this is a case where a society, the ACM, which would sort of be computer science equivalent to IEEE, found harassment which was in conflict with the university that was evaluating that faculty member. So what that says to me is societies like ours actually have the opportunity to play an active role in correcting problems and inequities, and it's not something that, say, we in IEEE should just stand back and say, oh, maybe this is the university's job or the company's job. We as a society have the opportunity to make a difference. Another example, not related to gender equity, but rather to international issues, was the recent Turing Award winner from Stanford. Recently, much information was highlighted about his history of anti-Iranian and anti-Chinese activities. And this is, again, something that the university had not really done anything about, but a community of researchers internationally addressed the issue. So again, highlighting that we can do things as an international society and correct wrongs, even those that are not corrected sort of at the local level. So within IEEE, I do want to note that we're not going to be operating in a vacuum here in the Robotics and Automation Society. There's a new IEEE tab committee on diversity and inclusion at the IEEE level, and they're helping coordinate and work across societies with resources and activities. And we're just starting to understand the scope of what we can do with that umbrella organization. As I mentioned, we're just getting started. So we're calling ourselves the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for now, although Chad and I have tossed around other fun names like JEDI, which speaks to the geek in us, but JEDI stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We'll see where that goes as we gain more committee members and get feedback from the community. We want to understand what are the right words to describe what we're trying to do. And of course, as you'll hear, there are a lot of people working on efforts related to diversity and inclusion. Women in Engineering group, particularly within RAS, has put on events at conferences, and you'll hear about a key effort to look at the gender diversity of our conference participation. This has also been looked at very carefully for journal editorial boards. And of course, not just gender, but also geographic diversity. MAB recently released a key survey. MAB is a member activities board, and this survey now has questions that we've never asked our membership before about identities and sense of belonging and inclusion. And this is key information that our society can act on once we finish gathering it, which we did not have before. So you'll hear more details about these efforts. In terms of this committee, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, or JEDI, or whatever it will be, we are still formulating exactly what we want from it. But what Chad and I have discussed and what I'm anticipating is that we will really serve as an advisory committee to existing RAS boards and other committees within our society, because there are so many hardworking people that are already trying to address these issues, and these other boards and committees are the place where things actually happen and policies are made. But also we want to be careful because, as often happens with diversity and inclusion efforts, it's people from the minority groups that are making those efforts, and they're asked to do a lot of service. And many of us, of course, are also doing service within our own universities or companies. So what we would like to do is think of ourselves as an advisory board that can really be the sounding board, the feedback, push new initiatives to the standard Robotics and Automation Society committees, who are the ones that when the rubber hits the road, actually implement things within the society. That's not something that we want to put on to the already, very busy and very involved people that we hope will join our committee. So our hope is to contribute a holistic view for RAS and pass on suggestions to other committees. So with that introduction, I'm going to ask Chad to highlight some of our thinking to date and welcome you to contact us with your ideas.
Right. Thank you so much, Allison. And it's great to be here with this esteemed group to address many of the big issues that we face as roboticists, because we have the ability, we will be shaping the future. And so it is good to know that we have those perspectives that represent our society as we're developing the technology that will serve society. And in that regard, we want to be able to understand the RAS membership and their goals with the knowledge that the different countries have different diversity and inclusion challenges, but knowing that we stand together as an international robotics community. We want to be able to cultivate a more inclusive robotics research community by understanding what mentoring events are needed and desired by our current membership and potential membership. We want to understand what kinds of affinity groups would benefit from RAS support. And so there are groups like Black in Robotics, which I'm not a member of, just to say, and Black in Computing, which was formed last year and has been very active. But all of these groups, wherever they reside, could benefit from RAS support. It's this understanding, and as Allison said, from knowing the surveys, and getting feedback, that we can have accountability for our society and our leadership to affect positive change, positive systemic change, and be able to recognize the diverse contributors all throughout the robotics and automation society, such as through inclusion and awards. We can do this. We want to maintain a regular discussion with the RAS community about diversity, equity, inclusion issues, because really communication and dialogue is the key for success. And so and one of the things that we also want to make note of is that the financial aspects, in terms of the money flowing through the system, is really what incentivizes our behavior. And we want to make sure that we are incentivizing the right behavior. There are some results that we can talk about, even some progress that has been made in terms of the technical community on telerobotics, which has worked with its members to recommend alternatives to master-slave terminology, which has been a long part of our community, but is really needed. But there's really a necessary change so that we can think of better options than using master for our Git branches and use main instead, and avoiding terms like black box or blacklist. At the end of the day, the key goal of our committee is to make sure that conversation about diversity and inclusion in the robotics community continue and result in positive action and systemic change. And so this is to dissipate, and we don't want to have this dissipate with a return to just business as usual. And this is meant to be a productive discussion where we make sure we have we maintain mutual respect. At the end of the day, we believe that the bigger issue is that we should have representation in the room. We need to make sure that we have proper representation in the research lab, in the classroom, the development teams, and our executive board, so we can affect positive change moving forward. With that, thank you very much. I'll pass back to you, Allison.
Thanks, Chad. Really well put. Just to conclude, you're welcome to contact myself and Chad if you would like to be involved in some way. We will definitely be reaching out to members of the community to get their advice and perhaps join our committee. In addition, I'm going to throw up into the chat some reading materials that people might be interested in, what websites, recently published articles that are related to diversity and inclusion in robotics. So thanks, everyone, and I will pass it back to Seth.
Thanks, Chad. Thanks, Allison. In the remarks that Allison made, she mentioned bad behavior by some of our colleagues, maybe now former colleagues, at conferences. We anticipated some time ago that it's only a matter of time until that sort of behavior shows up in a public way in the robotics and automation world. And so we've taken some steps in anticipation of that possibility to put together a code of conduct and a committee to listen to the community when such events might occur. And there's a nice video that has been prepared by that committee that I'm going to share with you now. I think it's Karinne and Nancy, I think, that you'll see. So here's the video.
Welcome, everyone. I wanted to talk to you today about some new activities we have in RAS that are designed to help our community be better and more inclusive, and also help us figure out how to manage situations that arise. So we'll be talking about the RAS CARES Committee and Code of Conduct. I'm Nancy Amato. I'm the Member Activities Board Vice President, and I'm also the co-chair of the CARES Committee.
Hi everyone, so my name is Karinne Ramirez. I'm the Associate VP of CAS of the Conference Activity Board on Operations. Together with Nancy, we are going to give you more overview about CARES of the Code of Conduct.
So thank you, Karinne. Let's move to the next slide. So first off, CARES, the RAS CARES Committee and the RAS Code of Conduct are something new that we adopted formally in RAS in 2020. They were approved by the Society's AdCom. And we are now launching them formally this year in 2021. The RAS Code of Conduct describes our expectations for each other and how we want to treat each other at our conferences. And the RAS CARES Committee is a new committee that we set up to help us manage those situations that might arise and are uncomfortable. So first we'll talk a little bit about the Code of Conduct and then CARES. Let's go to the next slide. So the Code of Conduct talks about how we would like to behave and treat each other at all of our RAS activities and conferences and events. It applies to everyone who's participating in those activities, RAS members, the participants, staff members, the workers at the venues, and all volunteers. And basically, it codifies that we would like to and want to welcome and encourage respectful and lively debate, differing opinions, and lively discussion. However, no IEEE RAS activity is a place for inappropriate, disruptive, or abusive behavior, either in person or online. Behaviors inconsistent with this Code of Conduct include things related to abuse, any type of harassment, which includes full harassment that discriminates or denigrates an individual on the basis of race, ethnicity, religion, citizenship, nationality, age, sexual or gender identity, disability, or any other characteristics protected by law in the location where the RAS activity takes place. It also applies to all forms of sexual harassment. Now, remember, it's important to remember that harassment can occur when there's no deliberate intention to offend. Be careful in the words that you choose. Harassment committed in a joking manner or disguised as a compliment still constitutes unacceptable behavior. Remember that sexist, racist, and other exclusionary jokes can be offensive to those around. Now, this Code of Conduct applies to all RAS activities, and we expect all participants to these activities to abide by this policy in all venues. Okay, so what happens if individuals don't follow the Code of Conduct? Well, consequences can range from removing an individual from that RAS activity, prohibiting them from participating in future activities, and excluding them from leadership positions, or otherwise terminating their membership in RAS. We hope that these activities, these consequences are very rare, but we do want to hold them up as potential. Okay, so let's now move to talk about CARES. The CARES Committee is a new committee that's new to IEEE. It started off, it's modeled after a successful CARES Committee that was started a few years ago in the ACM, Association for Computing Machinery. And basically what the mission of CARES is a committee that acts as a trusted listener and empathetic support for the RAS community members around misconduct concerns, including but not limited to sexual harassment, discrimination, and bullying, at RAS workshops, meetings, and events, at RAS workshops, meetings, and events. This is all of us were supposed to follow the Code of Conduct, and the CARES Committee can help members figure out how to address it. So because reporting these concerns to an IEEE official or the conference chair or some very high-powered person might be intimidating, we've established a CARES committee that consists of experienced, diverse, and empathetic senior members of the RAS committee. The idea is that hopefully there will be someone on the committee that all of us feel comfortable approaching. Let's go to the next slide. So the CARES, here's our inaugural CARES committee members. We have 3 co-chairs. Following the RAS tradition, we have a co-chair from each of the 3 RAS geographical areas. And then we have committee members that also cover the range of our membership. You are able to, any member of the community can report or approach any member of the CARES committee, whichever one you feel most comfortable approaching with any concern. And what the CARES committee members will do is we will work together to figure out how to help you. We'll help you understand what your options are, CARES is not an enforcement mechanism. CARES is simply a resource for the community for you to approach with confidential advice. We can help you figure out what your options are and help you kind of manage the process of reporting to RAS or IEEE or whatever the appropriate place is. So we're really here for you to come and have those initial discussions confidentially to help you figure out and understand your options. And now I'll pass it to Karinne, who will talk a little bit more about how CARES will be implemented at our.
Thank you, Nancy. Yes. So as mentioned, CARES will have all the conferences that are organized by RAS actually. And more importantly, in the major conferences like ICRA, we envision that at least 1 or 2 of the member representatives of CARES from the committee will be present. So feel free to approach them if you have any questions or you want to ask. And so we are going to contact the conference organizers so they are properly addressing the CARES to all the members. So the conference organizers need to properly announce CARES at the conference, most likely at the opening ceremony and the different highlight events. The CARES members are really visible and hopefully they will be announced also in the announcement of CARES, so you can know who to approach. Yeah, and all the information on CARES is already on the website, so feel free to look at it. And here are more information or more links that we have prepared for you about the code of conduct, the diversity, the IEEE CARES, and soon we will have the contact information on the website, so you can contact them not only during the conference but also afterwards. I think that's it from my side. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's it too. We just want to kind of, I guess, finish with the fact that we really are excited about launching the CARES committee and also our code of conduct. We think it will make it clear to all of our participants and the RAS members our expectations and will help us build a stronger and more inclusive RAS. So thank you.
Thank you, video versions of Nancy and Karinne, for that fine presentation. There will be time, I'll mention now at the end of this, for questions and live interaction with people that you may only see in video presentations through this first part of the meeting. I think I mentioned a little while ago that half the roboticists are not women, but half the world is women. That's something we noticed a while ago. So if there's any place where we're slightly ahead in terms of diversity, it's thinking about gender issues. We actually have a committee that has considered those things pretty seriously, collected loads of data, and Lydia Tapia is now going to present all of that to you. Alexis, if you haven't done so, we need to give Lydia the ability to share her screen. And Lydia, I turn it over now to you.
Thanks, Seth. There we go. Let's share screen. And here we go. Great. And you can see the slides, correct? No.
Not yet, I
Try
don't.
again. I'm clicking it. There we go. You have
Perfect.
to double click it. It's great. Okay. Thanks, Seth. We're really excited to be here to talk with you today. I'm Lydia Tapia, professor at the University of New Mexico in the RAS Women in Engineering chair. When I started this position about 3 years ago, we had just started this new initiative to collect data to assess gender diversity in RAS conferences. I'll tell you a little secret. We thought it was going to be easy. We thought we'd collect some data, run some plots, write a report, but it was nothing hard for us at all. But this 3-year endeavor was so much more work than an ICRA paper, and especially for that team that contributed, including Laura, Sandra, Hadass, and Risa. I'm really excited to announce to you today that the final report is coming out next week in the June Robotics and Automation magazine, and we'll give you a preview of that, some of those results today from the report and some of the recommendations as well. To start out, I want to talk seriously about gender and acknowledge an important fact. Gender is actually non-binary, so trying to fit individuals to binary labels such as female and male is not sufficient and needs to be the part of any future study. For the purposes of the effort we undertook, we had to perform gender classification from web pages and bios, and as such, we only considered a perceived gender binary classification for gender. We acknowledge this, and I want to be sure to mention it because we don't want to belittle any contributions of any individual that does not fit the binary model to which we were constrained in our data collection for this report. Okay, so we started out with a simple question. How gender diverse are our robotics conferences? Well, it's really simple, but it's also really big. So to begin to answer that question, we started with conference leadership. Now, you might be thinking, wait, what affects me as a researcher is the top papers are accepted and the top ideas are shared at the conferences I go to. I know that I think that both as a professor and as an editor of ICRA. However, to understand the impact of conference leadership on this process that's so important to us, it's good to take a step back and look at how a conference is made. General chairs are selected to run the overall conferences. They get to put together a team of people that they want to work with that are responsible to help them determine the program, the speakers, and the papers that are presented. And this is done in collaboration with program committees, but usually sometimes put together by the general chair and program chair. These individuals, with feedback from editors and reviewers, decide what research is considered as relevant and important enough to highlight. This inspires the next generation of ideas. How many times have you gone to a talk or heard a paper presentation and thought of something new that you could work on in your own research? In the worst case, the ideas that are shared are limited, and we all work on, sorry, Seth, I was going to pick on you here, robotic bats, right? Or my own research on high-dimensional motion planning for proteins and multi-agents. How many talks on that could you actually listen to? In the best case, we get to hear about diverse ideas and get diverse ideas. And that's what we want to promote through the study that we undertook. So understanding this importance of what we were studying, we went back 17 years and studied 11 conferences to understand gender diversity in RAS conference leadership and featured speaking positions. As you can imagine, that was a lot of tedious work, scrolling through archive webpage after archive webpage. Right away, we were surprised and not surprised at the results. We were surprised, give you the sneak preview there. We were surprised how bad things were 17 years ago. Only 4% of people in conference leadership and featured speaking positions were women. We were not surprised that this has actually improved in the past few years, as you just saw a second ago. Now, in the past few years, it has increased to about 20% women in these leadership, conference leadership, and featured speaking roles. But if we look at the transition between these time frames, it's actually a recent increase. And over the whole time frame, and I will show that to you, over that whole time frame, it has only increased at a rate of 1% per year. And there are a lot of things that go into a projection. But if we simplify assumptions, take a step back for a second, we could be looking at another 30 years until we see gender equality at this rate of change. So I want to talk for a second, talk to you about some of these numbers, what's behind these numbers. And when we're a minority within a field, it can feel like there are not very many visible other minorities, women per se, in robotics. So sometimes it feels like there are a lot of us doing a lot of things, kind of like Allison was talking about just a second ago. And for me, that can be things like reports on diversity. So we wanted to see if there was a small pool of women that were being appointed to these high-level leadership and speaking positions. So for the last set of plots, these plots you can see, you can infer the numbers that we were able to tally. Over the 17 years that we looked at, only 29 women worldwide have been appointed to be a program chair, compared to over 200 men in the same time frame. Also in that 17-year time frame, only 39 women have been given plenary talks, compared to over 300 men. This brought us some really hard questions, things as if there are only that few qualified women in the field of robotics. But what's also surprising from this analysis was that there were some individuals that were in leading roles several times. Someone general chair up to 7 times, program chair up to 8 times. And it wasn't just one individual, there were actually multiple of them. Simply put, what we need to do is to give both men and women more people a chance to lead, rather than asking the same people time and time again. And this was one of the recommendations in this report, because we need to build that pool of women and give other people a chance to lead. So we looked at differences both over time and for the different conferences. I'm just showing you a summary of the results today, but that full report has more detailed data, and we also have a supplemental data with details into all of the conferences as well. So if we look at conferences individually, one thing we notice is that some conferences are more diverse than others. On the x-axis on this plot, you see the different conferences, and then for each bar represents either a leadership role or invited speaker role. What you'll notice right away is that haptics has the most females as general chair, and ICRA right away has the most women serving as plenary speakers. Other conferences such as IROS and humanoids actually showed less diversity in their positions in leadership roles and featured speakers. So we also wanted to highlight any regional differences. So what happens when conferences are held in the Americas versus Asia versus Europe? So we looked at women in leadership roles by the conference location. And so what we saw was that conferences held in the Americas were actually the most diverse, and conferences in Asia demonstrated the least diversity. We saw this ordering. It actually held across all leadership positions, general chair, program chair, and plenary speakers as well. And it was surprising to several of us on the committee that there has actually never been a female general chair of one of the top 3 robotics conferences, ICRA, IROS, or CASE. And this led to a directly actionable recommendation in the report to improve this. So I want to talk to you for a sec without the slides. So I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, there you go. Stop sharing. So during this process, we actually started to notice some correlations between gender and different positions. And maybe it's not surprising if we take a step back and we look at how that conference is made again. Remember, general chairs appoint program chairs, which pick plenary speakers. And what we saw was that the percentage of female plenary speakers is actually highly correlated with that of program chairs across the whole period, We have a plot for this in the report. It's a little complex, so I'm just going to talk to you about it for a second. 3 of the 4 years, when there were not any female plenary speakers in the study conferences, there were actually no female program chairs. And also reinforcing this correlation, in 4 of the 5 years, when more than 10% of the program chairs were women, women held more than 10% of the plenary speaker roles. In the report, just like good scientists, we actually have the additional quantitative measures of correlation that you can see as well. The WE committee found these findings very serious, and we took them to every RAS board. It was a really long week of meetings, and just like Allison said, these are the people that make change and actually can do things as well. And you know what? They did step up and commit. Every board committed to an action to promote diversity based on this report. Some of the ideas extend the monitoring that we did for this report, making it possible to continue the study without heroic efforts. And some boards actually want to sponsor new initiatives. And we were excited to see such support from all the boards. So maybe you're wondering what you can do to help. In the report being published in the Robotics and Automation magazine, we offer you several suggestions, including the use of resource lists that Chad talked about before, and to find some new and upcoming researchers to include. Maybe you're thinking that you're just one person. How much of an impact can you actually make? As a follow-on to this report, we're studying some of the history behind these large changes in numbers. And what we're finding is actually really surprising, that some of those changes, a lot of those changes, were actually made by the thoughts and vocalizations of someone just speaking up, an individual, saying that things could be different and that we probably ought to include more diversity. And it wasn't those highly visible people that you may think of, like the people that spoke before me, Allison, Chad, Nancy, all before me today, and those that are going to speak after. It was actually just somebody saying things could be different. I leave you with a quote from our report. It is all of our responsibilities to create a more diverse and representative robotics community and to work together to ensure this is a place where anyone can thrive. I'm going to answer questions, like Seth said, afterwards, but also we're having a RAS event tomorrow for ICRA, and so I encourage anybody that's interested, wants more details, we can go into any of the details on any of the parts of the study that anyone is interested tomorrow as well, because we will hold the whole WE event to talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. The next presentation that we'll have is from Jyh-Ming Lien. I mentioned that the geographical disparities are important, as well as some of the other kinds of diversity issues that we need to confront. And Jyh-Ming is going to talk exactly about that, about how we're interacting with faculty in developing countries. So Jyh-Ming, on to you.
All right. Well, thanks, Seth. Hopefully I'm sharing. So my name is Jyh-Ming Lien. I am here as an associate VP from the Member Activity Board. As Seth mentioned, I am here to tell you about how we can increase diversity geographically via a new program called Developing Country Faculty Engagement Program. This is a RAS initiated program. The goal is to increase participation of RAS members in developing countries. So this program is actually built on a pilot program at ICRA 2017. So under the current format, RAS helps to identify research faculty in the developing countries. And we will match them with established researchers around the world. And through this program, we hope to increase RAS visibility and with this long-term impact in mind into developing countries to foster future and young researchers from these countries into introduce them into the robotics communities. More specifically, in terms of the program, the participating faculty and their mentors will work together. Firstly, to define a clear research direction, as well as important problems in a given direction that needed to be solved. So together, by the end of the mentorship, they will have at least one paper accepted by a RAS conference, such as IEEE RAS and CARES, or even a journal paper, such as RAL. So that's a really concrete criteria to evaluate how successful the mentorship is. The faculty from the developing country are also expected to create or expand a local RAS chapter through the evaluation of, for example, how many new members are added and what kind of activities are introduced. We also kind of envision that the participating faculty will establish international collaboration even after the awarded mentorship. So with helps from the committee members, Ron, Tony, and Nancy, we started accepting applications back in March and April. We received 97 applications, out of which 32 were completed. And with many helps from TAB and its technical committees, we are able to recruit about 105 potential mentors. I would like to actually stress that these numbers far exceeds our expectation. We thought we are not going to have that many excited applicants or even far fewer potential mentors. So currently we're in process of reviewing all of these completed applications, and we'll start to invite the selected applicants with their potential mentors for the second round of application process later this month. So under the current budget, we'll be able to support about 3 to 6 teams every year. The budget was approved at IRAS back in 2019, and the budget was for 3 years. So overall, we're really excited about this potential impact that we will have through this program to the developing countries and bringing more diverse future researchers into the robotics community. We'll be reporting back with new updates in the future ECRAS and IRASs, since this is just the first year that we pilot this program. Please do let us know if you would like to be part of the program, would like to know more about the program, or would like to contribute to improve the selection process or even the evaluation criteria. So thank you, and back to Seth. Let's see if I can stop sharing.
Thanks, Jyh-Ming. That concludes the scripted part of this town hall meeting. The fun part of town hall meetings always is the aggressive, belligerent questions from the audience that force the panelists to think on their feet and respond in a measured, thoughtful way. So feel free to drop your questions into the chat. I have 1 or 2 that have been submitted in advance. While you're thinking about questions, I'm going to suggest that you do open the chat. Have a look at the things that have been dropped there. Allison dropped 4 articles that you should, well, 3 articles in a video I think that you should all watch, especially if you're an old white dude. You should definitely read those. I would start with the Spectrum article that was written by, I think, Aaron Johnson, Henny, Edmani, and Carlotta Berry. That's a great starting point if you wonder what this is all about and the meaning of it. Do some work. If you wonder about how we're positioning ourselves with respect to gender diversity issues, there are a couple of links as well that you can follow. I should give a plug also to the, I think it's a Science Robotics article that was co-authored by my former boss, Ayanna Howard, who went off to do much bigger things and change the world as dean at Ohio State. And I'm mentioning these names not just to give shout outs to my friends, but to tell you there's a generation behind me, and maybe 2 generations behind me, who are doing it right. And I'm delighted at the way that generation is stepping up and doing things. And if you're in that generation, please be engaged. Old people like me, we have a fine line to walk. We want to encourage you to participate in these activities, But as I think it was Allison who said at the beginning, we don't want all the burden of change to fall on the groups that we're trying to reach out to. And so every time I invite somebody from an underrepresented group to participate in this, I understand that I'm inviting that person to do work. So if you're interested in being engaged, be aggressive about reaching out. There are plenty of places to do that. And let me extend that net well beyond diversity and inclusion activities. If you're a young person who thinks, I wish I were an associate editor of something, reach out to us, right? We can help make that happen. If you're a young person who would like to be organizing conferences, reach out to us and we can make that happen, right? So the spirit of inclusivity is nice, but if you depend on old people to reach out, it's a bad strategy. The much better strategy is for young people to really be aggressive about putting themselves forward for the things that they want. It's a lot easier for me to say yes for you than to figure out who you are, invite you, and convince you to do something. I want to impress upon you that it's a welcomed thing when you try to become involved, not a thing where I think, oh, what a self-promoter you must be. It's not like that at all. So please feel free to reach out. Let me go to a question or two that I have, and if any show up in the chat, we'll do those as well. The first one, I think it's either for Jyh-Ming or for Nancy or Karinne. How can I arrange distinguished lectures for my students and faculty online or offline? And this is coming from someone in a geographical region of the world where people are not visiting that often to talk about robotics.
So I think are they asking about our distinguished lecturer program?
Yes.
Let me find, we do have a distinguished lecture program that people can request one of our distinguished lecturers to speak at. There's a web page, if someone could drop it into the chat. And we have in RAS, I don't remember now how many technical committees we have, communities. Is the TC a community or a committee? I don't remember. But many of them have nominated distinguished lecturers, and you can go to the distinguished lecturer page and submit a request for a speaker. One of the very few good things that's come about through our current situation of the pandemic is we have actually really taken advantage of being able to present lectures remotely. So I'd strongly encourage everyone to kind of think about that as additional opportunities.
All right. Another question. Are there opportunities for funding for student projects? And I don't know the answer, and I feel I should. Nancy, you may know the answer.
So, Jyh-Ming, can you take this? It's very loud in my house right now.
Funding for students, for their research, for their travel,
For projects, for example.
Okay, I can try. Can you hear me okay? I have roofers at my house, I'm sorry. But we do have grants that you can apply for through RAS student chapters or RAS chapters, and that would be the way to apply for those types of things. That's not typically research, those are typically projects, but they could be. If you are interested in travel grants, we do support travel grants by students and authors from developing countries to our RAS conferences. In particular, the Society provides funding for travel grants for ICRA, IRAS, and CASE.
Super. Jyh-Ming or Nancy, this one is for you. The faculty engagement initiative is great. Are there plans to do other mentoring-like activities, not only for members of the faculty, because young researchers aren't always professors?
Did you want to take that, Jyh-Ming? Or
I'm thinking. Of course, I mean, we kind of want to reach out to people from industry as well, right? I mean, from those developing countries. They do need a door at least to reach out to the community. A lot of cases, and maybe I can also kind of answer the question that Stefano has in the chat. Through this very first step of the program, what we find out is that quite a lot of these countries, let me also put a URL in the chat from IEEE. That's a page that we kind of get information from to identify whether or not a country is qualified as a developing countries. Those countries with a star on it, those countries are really, really need helps, right? I mean, we realize that we don't even have a single RAS members in some of those countries, or just very few members. So being able to even bring one person, either students or people from industry or university faculty members, with that seed, that connection, we might be able to kind of dramatically increase the participation in that country in the next 5-10 years, right? I will have to say our first attempt this year is not doing a great job in that case. Most of the applications that we received, they're still from like large countries like India or Mexico, for example. Being able to reach out to those more underdeveloped countries is the key here. And I know Amy has been sending out emails to individual persons in those countries, but we still don't really have a lot of applications from them. So there's a lot of still we still have to work on in order to have deeper penetrations to those countries and to bring in deeper impact. So
Do you want to add anything to that, Nancy, or are you happy with that?
I'm mostly happy. I would say that it's a new program. We are still learning, and it's likely that we will, make modifications as we run through it. But we would encourage, I would encourage anyone who feels they could benefit. If you have a question about whether or not you qualify, don't just decide you don't. Reach out to us, and we will, work with you. Our goal is to increase engagement and connections across the globe, really.
And even I will have to say that even within United States, there are pockets, right, that were like poorly represented, right? Even if the country itself is not qualified as a developing country, but there are pockets within this more developed countries that needs to have more younger researchers participating in our communities. So hopefully this program is going to be in the future reaching down to the more local level and have them run their own kind of smaller version of the program in the future.
All right. I saw a question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep track of the questions and they scroll by too quickly. Specifically about outreach to Africa, which is not at all well represented in our society at the moment. Do we have anything specific in mind there, or are they grouped together in the emerging countries?
They're not. We have a very few number of applicants from Africa, and they're not lumped together, of course. I mean, they're reviewed individually. I was also just made aware that there is actually a IEEE level program that is similar to the one that we are running right now. It might have something that we can actually learn from their approach. I have no idea how long they have been running that program, but I think their program is focused more on African countries. So probably through their program, we might be able to reach out to more researchers, especially robotics researchers in those areas.
All right, I think this question is important. It's about engaging with diversity and inclusion efforts if you're a young person, and the fact that that engagement doesn't necessarily show up on your CV and doesn't necessarily bring any professional reward to you. And the question is, how can we incentivize this kind of interaction and activity? So first, I'm going to ask if anybody on the panel has an idea, and I suspect that they do, but if not, then I'll hazard a guess. Anybody want to respond to that? All right, they're going to trust me to respond. Chad, I can't tell if you're talking and muted or not talking.
I'm trying to type. I was going to respond to Jim, and maybe I can sneak something in while I'm saying this. And that I appreciate what everything is that the people are saying about old white men reading up and doing the work. But I just want to come back and say that that this is really about the overall environment for everybody. This is something that we all take on. Diversity is not just about including new people who aren't there, but it's about how do you provide the environment that's going to help us make the products that will have a positive impact on society. This is a burden that we all share together, and we just need to be able to do this. And it doesn't just affect the populations. If you're thinking about even just the program itself, the technical program, there are issues right now about collusion rings and lack of diversity affecting how, what we see in peer review and merit review. These are all part of the overall enterprise that we have to think about, and the biases that creep in many different dimensions. And so this is work that we all have to take on. And so I appreciate what Jim said about the program. Anybody who gets a review that they don't like, you immediately start thinking, there's some bias against you. And so, how you feel at that moment, is something you should take into consideration when we're trying to reach out and think about how you would want to be treated if you're the one who's experiencing the bias. And that goes across international, racial, gender, intellectual lines. And so this is something that we all have to work on together.
Thanks, Chad. And I think I'm going to just add a couple of words about what's the incentive for participating in these. I mean, there's the obvious incentive of making the world a better place. What you may not realize when you look at the people in front of you, or when you look at the names in the chat, is that the people who are doing this now are people that you want to hang out with. I mean, if you have a chance to hang out with Chad and Allison, you should take that chance, regardless of what it is that offers you that opportunity. You should take that chance. I have been impressed by the fact that the people who are taking the issues of diversity and inclusion seriously are good researchers. It's people that I respected before I noticed these kinds of activities happening. This is not some sort of backdoor entry. This is really credible people doing good research who see a broader spectrum of issues that should be confronted. And so I think that's another incentive for you to be involved. I mean, you get to hang with these folks, and that's a win. The last thing I'll say is I think it's time to wrap up. I don't see any more questions. I'm very new.
Jim asked one in the chat.
Lydia, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Jim asked one in the chat. We were having a conversation.
I saw that. That was yeah, it was privately to the panel. Yeah, it was privately to the panel, so I didn't articulate it to the group. But I will say this, many of us are doing some kind of leadership activity, whether that be organizing a conference that's 5 years from now or 3 years from now, or choosing who's going to be the next associate editor for RAM or for RAL. You might wonder what you can be doing along these lines, and you may be clueless. And so there's the general question of, well, what should I do? And I think it would be foolish for me to give you an answer or for this panel to try and give you a bullet list. I think you should engage with the people who know, and any one of the people that you see in front of you on this panel will have some ideas. If you want to know specifically about editorial boards, then Allison is a great resource, having been an editor-in-chief of an editorial board for a while. If you want to know how to reach out in a variety of ways that member activities are involved, then there's Nancy right here in front of you, and others. I won't go through the whole list, but I would certainly encourage you to reach out and have these conversations with people who have ideas, and to be aggressive, and to not be afraid to step back and relinquish a piece of your control over some activity, because nobody's going to think, oh, you know, this person is shirking their responsibilities by giving up some control. So don't hesitate to do that. I think the last thing I want to say is, I don't want anybody to think that this town hall is meant to be a moment of celebratory self-congratulation of the Robotics and Automation Society for having formed some committees. I don't think that we're at a point where we should be congratulating ourselves and celebrating. I think we're at a point where we've started to realize that there are some issues that we need to deal with as a society, and we've started to take some steps. And I'm thinking it's at least 1 or 2 presidents in the future when we have a moment to celebrate. I'll say maybe 1, because the president-elect is on the call, and he might be the guy that gets to celebrate our successes in diversity and inclusion. But it's premature to be celebrating. At this moment, it's a time to think about where we're going. And that makes me offer Frank, if you have any words that you want to say about where we're going as president-elect, this is Frank Park. Feel free to do so now.
Yeah, I know we're late. I think everything you've put just, you know, our future, the mission of the committees very eloquently. I just want to let everyone know that I'm very committed to continuing the efforts, expanding our efforts, and just we want to just keep on this arc. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank. So Frank will begin his term as president of the society in January, and he and I have been talking about these kinds of things for months, and I promise you that commitment is real. This is not just a moment that will dissipate over time. And if any panelist has anything else to add, this is the chance. Otherwise,
just saying we've got a lot of work to do. This is not self-congratulations. This is what we need to do for the future. And I thank you so much, Seth, for bringing this together. This was tremendous, and it's a great step forward.
While we shouldn't be congratulatory, I think we have done some innovative things in RAS that will help us. You know, we've recognized the challenge and we're trying to address it. And we put in place some new activities that, if they're successful, I think they could be taken up by other areas in IEEE. I know they're watching us. So we have an opportunity to actually step up and lead here and do something, and I'm excited to do that.
Yes, for those of you who don't know about the larger mammoth organization of IEEE, they often watch what our society does, and other societies copy what we do. So there's an even larger benefit to the world for doing these things well within RAS. And when I say it's not a moment for self-congratulation, I meant that primarily about me. It's always a good moment to congratulate the others on this call for the work that they've done. And with that, I will thank you for your participation and attendance, especially thanks to the panelists, not just for their participation here, but for the work that's happening when they're not at town hall meetings. And I hope to see you all at a future conference. I think Philadelphia might be the next chance. So I hope to see you soon, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Hmm.